Happy New Year, everyone. Yes, we made it. Great. Yeah, today we're going to pick up right where we left off from yesterday. Spent a good amount of time talking about preference assessments, and now we're going to look at different type of assessment. This is going to be on skill acquisition goals that we can formulate. And today's lesson also includes a bit of show and tell, which I'll do a little bit later. Any questions before we proceed forward? No, we're good? Let's just jump right into it then. So just like with preference assessments, skill-based assessments are a systematic approach we can do to examine and assess a client's repertoire. Now, a repertoire is just a fancy way of saying everything that they can do. Because you can think of all the behaviors that you can engage in a particular moment. There are those that you can do. There are those that you can't do. And to support the client and all of their goals in the ISP and the VIP, we want to be able to take a look at, okay, where are they at? And then how can we improve it? So we try to identify those deficits, those holes that prevent them from going further and developing more complex skills. All for the sake of developing an individualized plan that addresses their particular needs. Just like what we were saying about the preference assessments, we're looking at what the individual finds preferred, finds reinforcing. It's all about making it applicable for the client at the individual level. See, in this field, there are a ton of different types of assessment and curriculum tools, because along with being able to tell you, okay, here are all the things that the client may lack, they also have a curriculum in place in order to show you, oh, this is then how you would go about teaching those skills. Now, some of the curriculum tools are better than others. Some of them, I kid you not, it's just a long list of different goals. And then it's kind of up to you to decide how you would go about running it. But yeah, to really touch on some of the more common ones, by and large, the most popular, I would say, is the VB map. This one stands for the verbal behavior, milestones, assessment, and practicing protocol, something around those lines. This one is much more used for children, typically under the age of 4, to get them to catch up to their peers in terms of communication. Now, I'll show you guys a few examples of those. I thought I had a video attached to this one, but it's all right. And then another one that is quite common is referred to as the ABLES. This one stands for Assessment of Basic Learning and Living Skills, revised. Focuses, this one's more used in the school settings. Again, typically with children where you're trying to get them to catch up with their peers. This is much more about academic skills, having them be able to sit at a desk for a period of time, math, language, and all that. But the one that I think would benefit a lot more from utilizing is the AFLS. This one stands for Assessment of Functional Living Skills. And this is the one I was referring to. It's just lists of pretty much 1,000 different skills that adult clients can learn in various domains. So everything that is in, let's say, self-care or hygiene, it will tell you, oh, can they brush their teeth? Can they shave themselves? Can they do shower? All these things. Just, again, a litany of different types of skills that we can teach them. I would say, in large part, those are the 3 most common ones. Actually, I have a video for the tools. Let's take a look. So this is somebody conducting the assessment on the AFLS.
I'm here today with my client, and we are going to be AFLS. The area that we're going to be studying is grooming. So the first task is terms the same pronoun prior. Can you term the same pronoun, please? Can you wash your hands? All right, can you allow me to brush your teeth? The goal is going to be for 2 days, but whatever you can tolerate is fine. There's no right or wrong answer. Okay, let's see how much you can tolerate. I'm just gonna start just to see what they do.
It's been quite a while.
Stop. Okay. All right, you can spit that out, baby. You did that for 27 seconds. Okay. The next thing that we're going to look at is you take off the cap of the toothpaste and put it back in the cap. Good job. Can you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush? Good job. All right. Can you brush your own teeth? Okay, all right. So if you rinse the toothbrush, you did that automatically. Good job. And you return the toothbrush to its proper location. And you put away the toothpaste without being prompted. It's okay. Make sure.
Returns items where they
What
belong
else
to.
should you do with learning? So you put a toothpaste up, you put your toothbrush up, what comes next? Good job.
Yeah, I think we get the idea. So as you guys can see, it began with more prerequisite, more fundamental skills, such as being able to tolerate somebody brushing your teeth. But then if you're gonna go about teaching somebody to do that independently, well, first they have to be able to open up the toothpaste bottle themselves, be able to retrieve their own toothbrush, and then you would go about building up the skill from there. So that's how the Kinky does it. And this is what the VB map looks like. So you see, it starts off with milestone 1. This is typical. It pretty much assesses what a typical 18-month-old would be able to do. So here it's talking about manding, so requesting. And it's asking, can the child emit 2 words or signs or pecks, the peck icons, in order to make a request? And usually you would go about doing it or assessing it in a few instances. So if this is the initial one, then you'll be filling out this first box. Oh, but I'll get into how to fill it out in a little bit. But you see, then it goes from 2 to 4 different mans, and then generalizes 6 to multiple individuals or settings. So we'll come back to this one. And then this is what pretty much all of the AFOLs pages look like. See, we're talking about grooming, and then it tells you about the task. No, it's tough for you guys to see this in the back, but the first one is floss teeth, completes toothbrushing process at least twice a day, and then the skills get more and more complex as you go through the domain. So it tells you the task objective and the easier way to think about the skill. Oh, can they floss their teeth? Do they brush their teeth twice a day? And then they give you the criteria, so what to target. So then we can make one of those specific goals on their plans. And then, yeah, the scoring guide. Does this make sense? Because I know this seems like a whole bunch of work. But yeah, that's essentially how we would assess that. Okay, yeah, let's move on to, again, some more ones that I think are a lot more. EFL, the essential for living, but at least start with it. Some of the goals and some of the plans on this curriculum for the DIPs that I've been writing recently. And this is essentially what it looks like. This is a assessment tool specifically geared towards individuals with moderate to severe disabilities, which I would say would be all of our clients. Now, the cool thing about this one is it focuses on the most essential skills and individual needs in order to live a functional life. The skills you need that are non-negotiable, every single person, every single human being should have these skills down. And they are fairly fundamental things, such as making requests, waiting. You can imagine just how much of a barrier not being able to wait can cause an individual, or accepting no. Oh gosh. Where a client, the second they hear no, they're off to the races. And then in terms of the way we would go about it in our context as RBTs, we would ensure that these skills can be generalized across multiple settings. So it's sure it just doesn't happen here, but when the client is, let's say, on an outing, or we can ensure that those same targets or skills are generalized when they're at their care home, for instance. So let's get a little bit deeper into the EFL, because I think this is one of the best assessment tools we have available. Let's watch an introductory video on it first.
Children and adults with moderate to severe disabilities, including but not limited to autism, struggle to learn functional skills, such as communication, daily living, and tolerating skills, skills that will matter in their adult lives. Essential for Living is a comprehensive curriculum, a skill tracking instrument, and practitioner handbook designed to help teachers, speech-language pathologists, and behavior analysts teach functional skills and manage problem behavior. EFL includes 3,000 skills and focuses on the essential 8 skills that are necessary for effective adult living. These include expressing your needs and wants, waiting, accepting no, transitioning, responding as a listener, tolerating commonly occurring situations, and avoiding hazardous ones. EFL also focuses on communication and language skills by helping those who are nonverbal find an effective alternative method of speaking that lasts a lifetime. The communication, language, and functional academic skills in EFL are also linked to the Common Core state standards. EFL is more than just a list of skills. It's when and how to track small increments of learner progress often experienced by learners, especially those with severe handicaps. Join the ranks of school districts, private schools, ABA programs, and supported living communities that are effective to improve the lives of their students and residents.
And let's look at specifically the essential 8 Some of these skills, I'm sure you guys already have encountered them in the ISP and the BSPs and EIPs. Let's take a bit of a deeper dive into those.
7 different categories of skills, you see?
Very good.
And in each of those categories, the skills, how are they sequenced? Now, remember, they're not sequenced according to the 3-month skills, 6 months, the 9-month, 18-month, and so forth. They're not referenced in typical development. They're not sequenced. They're not sequenced by academic.
Actually, let's just go because he's gonna. Yeah, so it's divided into 8 domains, and the first essential one is being able to, again, make requests, and then being able to respond as a listener. So those one-step instructions that we try to stress, being able to, name, describe, or be able to label, so the tagging. Answer questions and conversations. So this is the interverbals that we discussed previously. Daily living skills. And then we don't have to worry too much about this one, academic skills. This is a big one, being able to tolerate, waiting, no, problem behavior, and then basic, more looking at motor movement for specific actions. I kind of threw a bunch of videos up here, didn't I? Let's see what this one's about. This is one of my favorites.
What I did in my very first semester is that I required that all of my teacher education students, because they were going to get a bachelor's or a master's with me in special education, severe impairments, they had to go spend a night in a group home. They had to get there at 4 p.m. They had to stay overnight in the home. Some cases there was an empty bedroom, some cases it was a cot, sometimes it was literally sleeping in the kitchen. They had to spend overnight. They had to see what it was like to be an adult with developmental disabilities. And then they had to wait, do the whole morning routine and people up, and they had to do that 3 times in a semester. The first time I assigned them that, oh, the grumpy faces. I mean, just like the death faces. They're like, really? This is an education class. What are we doing with that? But I insisted on it. And boy, they came in and we'd sat in curriculum class. You talk about the wide eyes. Oh my God, the experiences that they had. People getting into fights at the dinner table. People who couldn't communicate with one another. Adults. Oh, they've been taught a little bit of communication with a non-disabled adult, but communication with each other, never been taught that. And if you look around today, 2023, how many places do exactly that? How many times have you ever seen somebody who communicates with pictures communicate with a peer with pictures? When's the last time you saw that? And that's 40 years later. Hasn't changed much. Hasn't changed much. But you'll see a skill and essential for living. Mans or makes requests with peers. With peers. And honors the request of your peers. So not only do you have to ask the questions, you have to make requests with your peers, but you have to learn to honor the requests that your peers make of you. So that we avoid, if we can, those awful fights over the mashed potatoes at the dinner table or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I cannot tell you guys just how amazing it is when you have those clients with limited speech interacting or making requests to one of their peers, and then they fulfill it. And if you're there, then of course you just be able to provide all the praise necessary and possible. So for instance, I'm there in Mike's care home. There's a resident there. He mainly uses signs, and they were both sitting in the living room. And the other client, he starts coughing profusely, and he then signs water. I'm there. I could fulfill it, but I'm just gonna wait this out, see what happens. And here comes Mike, of all people, goes to the kitchen, grabs his cup, the other client's cup, fills it with water, brings it to him, and then he just turns to me, waiting to see how I'd respond. And of course, I praise him over the moon, like, "Oh, good job, Mike! That was amazing! Yes, great work giving so and so their cup." And as you could imagine, when the staff came out from the garage, he wanted me to tell them what he did too. But it goes to show they know how it is they could interact with their peers, even if it's done non-vocally. So that is very true. Do we have time for this other one? I don't even remember what this other one was. Maybe I'll come back to it. Okay, yes. Moving on to the MODIS. Again, this is another functional-based curriculum assessment tool. This is, well, it looks like it recently came out in 2025. So I'm still trying to explore it and get familiar with it. But very similar to the EFL and AFOLs. It's just a list of a bunch of different goals from different domains. But what's specific about this one is it ensures that the skills targeted are meaningful to the individual. And it stresses this idea that oftentimes comes a little bit too neglected in the field, that of social validity, where something can be much more effective if everybody else is on board to implementing it. Now, you would think that people would put greater emphasis in ensuring that everybody likes what we're doing, the intervention in place, the treatment plan, and that would be enough for it to be effective. Oftentimes, no. Some people just kind of want to stick to their guns and just stick to what they know, and that doesn't allow us to get social validity. But with the MODIS, it's so imperative that things are meaningful to the individual, that what we're teaching actually matters to them. Yeah, and what's cool about the MODIS is it also emphasizes the values that some of the clients or individuals in their lives may be, that could be addressed. You know, a few weeks ago when we were talking about ACT, there's a big emphasis on values. And what I like about the MODIS is it kind of brings that into the mix as well. Because when something is meaningful, it is valuable to the individual. Yeah, so something that we can ask ourselves is, okay, this John client, sure, he can sort blocks, but does that skill then translate to him being able to sort things in the context of vocational tests, such as in the office, or being able to do sorting games for leisure? Who knows? And the MODIS has really stepped up the game when it comes to being able to make these distinctions, make the skill more meaningful. So yeah, in the standard, this is something that you would typically find in the BB map. So being able to identify a picture. Okay, great. You know what a picture looks like. You can respond correctly to a picture of a bus. But what if the individual can actually use the bus as a contextual stimuli that leads them to getting something more meaningful, such as learning how to use the paratransit app to go around the community to places they want to go. There are a handful of clients who that is something they've learned to do. They know how to use paratransit, and they're able to go to their church, to the mall, all sorts of places. And in their context, that is a lot more useful than just being able to label a bus. Same thing with being able to stack items. What if that can be used in the context of work? Or being able to initiate and have a meaningful conversation just to oppose being able to greet somebody when they're prompted. So this is what typical page in the MODIS looks like. So you see every single domain has a meaningful outcome. Let's see what it is for communication. Builds a network of language through verbalization or alternative methods that allow for wants, needs, and thoughts to be expressed. Displays behaviors conducted to be understood by familiar and unfamiliar individuals and prepared to engage in the communication. So you see, again, we start off very basic. So being able to use different vocalizations doesn't even have to be words. I'm hungry, I'm sad. It just has to be different sounds than others. And then from there, being able to use voices or gestures, reaches for communicative devices, and they rev up in difficulty as the learner progresses through the curriculum. And then another one I got that I didn't. Yeah. Another assessment tool I like is this one. It's called Socially Savvy. It's not included in notes. It's a much more smaller one, just more focused on social skills and emotional identification for some of the clients with more complex verbal repertoires. This one is designed for children, but I've been finding some ways to be able to adapt it for our adult clients. Okay. Now that we are familiar with some of the assessment tools at our disposal, how do we actually go about using them, or at the very least participate or assist in their implementation? One of the first is simply direct observation. Just as we saw in the video, if you ask somebody to do something, can they do it? If they can, great, move on to the next thing. If not, well, that could be something we can address. Same thing here, directly testing. Sorry, that was more for directly testing. Directly observing is just standing back and seeing if they do it. And then, of course, you can always interview people in their lives to see if they are able to display those skills. Yeah, so let's say we're in a situation where we can start running some of these curriculum tools on a new client or a client that we're trying to revise our plan for. What kind of things can we do? So if we want to directly implement the assessment, there's some things we got to recognize. First things first, it's an assessment, it's a test. So there should be no prompting involved whatsoever. When we prompt, that means we lead them to getting the correct answer. But if they don't know how to get there to begin with, then yeah, we're not really recording what it is their true repertoire. Yeah, if you guys remember the video on Clever Hans, the horse that could supposedly do math, he followed the nods. Yeah, the nods of the people as he was approaching the correct number. And that completely disproved that he did not know how to do math. He was just looking at people's inadvertent prompts. So we want to make sure we avoid using those two. Yeah, and this is something that I do from time to time, role play with the client. So we're getting into, let's say, safety awareness, domains, and kind of assess how the client would respond in a given situation. And so you would role play that, and based on how they respond, you can pretty much tell how they would do. For instance, just with the modus, there was one of the care home clients. His family was trying to get him a passport so then they can start traveling together. And one of the things that they concerned about him is his lack of safety awareness, especially when it comes to strangers. So I did a part of the modus with him, and I showed him pictures of just stock photos of people, random people, and to him, everybody I showed him to was a friend. That is not something we want, because if everybody's a friend, then there are no strangers. And then same thing with acting as a peer. If one of the skills is turn taking or sharing, those are things we can role play as well. Yeah, data, it's pretty cut and dry. I'll go back to the VB map in just a moment. But typically it's binary yes. It's either yes, they have a skill, or no, they do not. Just like how we take the discontinuous measurement recording, so the whole, partial, interval. Did the behavior happen? If it did, then we put a check. If it didn't happen, we put the absence. The VB map is interesting. Yeah. So with the modus, yeah, you just score if they were able to get it. The VB map's interesting because if you have, they're always in evens. So if they commit 2 mans, then you would just put a 1. So they would get points for this. But if they only have 1 man, then you only put half a point. And if they have no mans, then 0 points. And then you just add everything all up, and then you'll get their score. And as you go through the various assessments, you'll see whether or not their score has improved or not. So that's that. Yeah, and something that could potentially happen would be for the RBT to gather the data and then put it into the scoring guide. So after you've done the assessment, after it's been conducted, you then would put it into these grids typically, kind of showing, demonstrating how far the client has scored in the various domains. And this kind of gives you a good visual graph of where the client stands in terms of skills and goals listed out in the assessments. Then yeah, and it's always, this insight is incredibly valuable. Whenever you guys are able to share things like this, it is so incredibly valuable. Yeah, I noticed he can do this in this context, but not in this one. Okay, that means we have to work on generalization then. We also have to talk about being ethical, and even when we're conducting assessments, still key. And just doing the typical things that we would normally do. Yeah, client confidentiality, ensuring that the results of their scores are stored in, let's say, their binders or in the office. Of course, they're adults, so we got to use age-appropriate stimuli. And yeah, we shouldn't expect things to be perfect. I mean, by definition, the reason we're running assessments is to see where they're at. And if there are skill deficits, then we want to be there to address those things. Yes, it's like,
Can be normal if I say we aren't looking for failure? Like you said, we're not looking for perfection, but we are also looking for.
oh, certainly, yes. That is a good way to think about it too. Because as we saw in the video, if the learner is able to perform a given task, then okay, that's good. We'll just move on to the next thing. Yeah, everybody has their different strengths and weaknesses. So just to be able to get a good idea of what those are, yeah. I like that. I like thinking of it that way. Yeah, and then probably later on, after we're done with all the RBT stuff, I would like to also place a little bit of greater emphasis on the EFL material, because I think that could be incredibly useful for the clients. Okay. We're ready to answer questions now?
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, so what is the primary difference between a preference assessment and a skill-based assessment?
B.
Yeah, let's see. B, yes. Preference assessment, we're finding out, yeah,
B.
why it works for the clients, the things that can reinforce them, skill-based, what do we need to work on? Which assessment tool focuses on functional living skills?
C.
See? Yes, it's in the name. Assessment of functional living skills. Yeah. And we didn't talk about the Early Start Denver model. That's another one that is geared towards young children, typically once they get into school. When assisting with direct testing assessment, what is the most important rule for an RBT? No prompting, something. B?
B.
Yep. No prompting. Again, we just want to see, we want to, yeah, we're not expecting perfection, and we're not expecting failure either. Let's just see where they're at. That's the most important part. And if we are going to reinforce, it's only to reinforce their cooperation. That's, oh, thank you for going along with the test. We appreciate your willingness to participate. That is what we're reinforcing, not the particular behaviors. What makes the modus unique? What makes this the most unique, or one of the most unique assessments?
Whether a skill actually improves the client's quality of life.
Big.
B?
Yes.
Yes. Again, if something is meaningful, it's valuable, and it increases somebody's quality of life. That is why it's become quickly one of my favorite assessment tools. What is the essential 8 referring to in the EFL?
Physical safety, education, everywhere.
Okay, so is that C? Yes. A most critical. These are non-negotiable. I don't care who you are. If you can't accept no from time to time, then yeah, it's gonna be very difficult to be around you. True or false? If a client needs physical prompter to complete a test or an assessment, you should mark it as independent.
False.
Yes, that is false. They need a prompt, then it's not independent by definition. That's one. Generalization means the client can perform a skill only when a particular individual is in the room. Yes, false. You guys got it. That's right. Great. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, I want to say 2 months ago. So I'm glad you guys were able to recall that and be able to put it to use. Because these things, they're all so interconnected. Any questions before we end our day?
Question? No. Thank you. That's the question.
Yes. Okay, no worries. Monday, functional based assessments. Yeah, I'm excited too. So it's a fun one.
Thanks,
Of course.